One of the biggest challenges in America today is the need for greater tolerance for those who think differently about the biggest issues of the day. Today's guest is Jessica Tarlov, a Fox News contributor and co-host of The Five. She's a messaging and data strategist for candidates, companies, and causes, and one of a new breed of progressive voices exploring what defines us, what drives us, as we try to become more civil in tone and united in purpose. From Ballard Studios in Washington, D.C., it's 13th and Park.
The hard things that are necessary, we either do it or we'll pay the price down the road.
That often is missing in politics.
We have to solve everything.
It's a nightmare.
You and I can differ, but that doesn't mean you and I cannot be friends.
I have faith in the American people.
Those are the facts.
The Illuminati, right there. Aliens could have invaded and nothing would surprise me at this point.
We went from North Korea to M&M. That's a lot, man.
What's in this tea?
So Jessica Tarlov, great to have you on 13th and Park. Obviously, a lot of people across America and beyond know you for your time with Fox and standing tall for more progressive or Democrat points of view. I find it interesting. I wanted to start here. You see today Governor Newsom in California, who is very much looking at his prospects for 28, the presidential campaign, moving, it seems, at least on some issues, closer to the center. You see John Fetterman from Pennsylvania, Senator Fetterman, who's embraced the Lake and Riley Act, was all for the incursion into Iran to get rid of their nuclear capability. So you're seeing signs of some Democrats, at least, moving towards the center. But generally, it seems Democrats are still looking for their game. What are they missing right now, do you think, in terms of the message? And you deal with that all the time, that you think can get them back on their game and ready for the midterms?
Yeah, so a few things there. One with John Fetterman. John Fetterman has always been an ideologically inconsistent politician. So Fetterman, I don't put in the same category necessarily, but I think what's going on with Governor Newsom and with some other politicians around the country as well is it feels as if 2024 was almost like a permission slip to say certain things that the consultant class and a lot of the staffer class were uncomfortable with. I truly do not believe that it's an issue of what elected officials themselves think. Obviously, there are going to be some outliers, but
Sure.
if you asked a run-of-the-mill elected Democrat, do you think that Leah Thomas should have been able to do that and to place? They would have said absolutely not. But once you got into the nitty-gritty of the way that politics is done on my side of the aisle, and I know your side less, I imagine there are special interest groups on your side as well that push people to uncomfortable positions.
Right.
We really would have been with the consensus. And this is about an 80-20 issue. So I think that 2024 has been this permission slip. Just kind of say what you think. And also to be more comfortable with the blowback that's to come from it. Like someone like Seth Moulton, said, I have two daughters. I don't want them competing against biological men. There was some pushback, but generally speaking, Seth Moulton didn't lose anything for saying that.
Right.
Before the election, I think that would have been trickier. So that's the lesson, I guess, that I think people are learning at this point. In terms of the party finding its footing and what message will we center around, there are going to be campaign slogans. But for me, the most important message, and what I'm seeing some people do, but not necessarily enough, is to just be yourself. I think that politicians have spent so long trying to get away from who they are because of all of these message tested, consultants. And they're saying, oh, but I saw this. And if you don't capitalize this, people are going to freak out about that. It's just not true. People are remarkably normal. They also give a lot of grace. I've always spoken about that since I started working at Fox, and I've never been anywhere but in conservative media as a liberal. So it's a little bit of a different experience. But I've been overwhelmed by how normal people are, especially people on the other side of the aisle. We have this preconceived notion that they're like aliens. And it's just not the way that it actually works, and that the American people are a forgiving people. And that we should really lean into just being yourself.
It's not necessarily a lesson for all cycles because President Trump is a disruptor. But it's not necessarily what we want long term, because you might argue that in 2020, Joe Biden prevailed over Donald Trump because it was kind of like a time America could catch its breath a little bit from 4 years under Donald Trump. And 4 years later, we were looking for someone that would fundamentally change the way things were going. So again, the disruptor brand, I think, seemed to present itself. But it looks to me that Democrats are nervous about embracing some things that are becoming the norm in the middle, right? To start with border security. And I
Yeah.
know it's complicated because you can get into the deportations part of it and ICE and the new camp down in Florida, Camp Alcatraz, right? But people want to feel in control and they want to feel safe. What can Democrats do on something like border security if they're to be competitive in 26 and beyond?
Just admit that there were laws on the books that could have been implemented earlier. And people
There you
have
go.
this thing where they feel like, I don't want to sell Joe Biden out. And arguably that cost Kamala Harris the election, right? That
Mhm.
interview on The
Yep.
View where they said, well, what would you do differently? And she hadn't figured out a way
Right.
to say, we have a tremendous amount of accomplishments under our belt. If I were in charge, this is what I would have done differently. And I'm
That's
pretty
it.
sure that Biden, the same way Nancy Pelosi tells everyone in her caucus, you go out and you say whatever you have to say about me. If you want to call me the devil, call
Right.
me the devil. You
Right.
want me to campaign with you? I will be there. We need to win. I think that that's the first step of this. And then I think people just need, again, to get back to that authenticity point, to talk about their lived experience. A lot of these elected officials are in blue municipalities. Like I live in New York City.
Right.
And you just say what you saw, right? That we had a huge spike in homelessness because of this, that we had hotels that were taken over. Most importantly, that we had resources that go to tax-paying Americans,
Mhm.
especially in Black and Brown communities, that were taken away to deal with the migrant crisis. Admitting any of that does not make you less of a Democrat. It doesn't make your heart any smaller. It just makes people think that you're someone that is functioning on the same planet as them. But I think at this particular moment, with how potent an issue illegal immigration is, you have to show that you have a certain level of care and understanding for how salient this is for people.
Should we read anything into what's going on in New York City and the New York mayoral elections? There was kind of a shocker in terms of the Democratic nominee. Cuomo withdrew from the Democratic nomination race only to go in as an independent. Do you think this race at all represents maybe the beginning of another change within the party and that we should maybe look at this race as maybe some kind of indicator of what could happen in certain parts of America in 26?
So I think, yes, in terms of campaign strategy and the type of politician that could win, but not necessarily the politics.
Okay.
So I don't think that suddenly Democratic socialists are going to be winning their primaries across the country. The far left, when there is a contentious primary, the centrist or the moderate Democrat usually wins by about 3 to 5 points on average. That I don't think has changed.
Right.
But the way that Mamdani presented, the way that he campaigned, and the issues that he focused on are a template for every Democrat in this country, from AOC to Alyssa Slotkin.
Wow.
So talking about affordability relentlessly, that works. Roy Cooper, who just launched for
North
North Carolina
Carolina.
Senate,
Mhm.
going to
Right.
be extremely formidable. It'll probably shift to lean Dem almost immediately. Now he's folksy and he sounds
Yes.
like an older man from North Carolina, but the content of it mirrors what Zoran Mamdani is talking about in New York. And I think that that will be the difference, and you will see that replicated all over the country. And I think for someone who's not a Mamdani supporter, that is a silver lining in all of this for folks that want Democrats to win more races.
I just get this sense that older politicians, people that have been in the process for a while, are scared to death of Gen Zers because they're not maybe sure how they're seeing the world anymore and maybe what's appealing to them. And we saw in a lot of polling in 24, there was great softening in support for Democrats generally among younger voters. What is the key for Democrats to get back into the sweet spot there with voters who I think are generally dissatisfied with the entire process?
Yeah, so we did see, just starting last week, there were a couple polls that came out that now Gen Zs have completely flipped back to Democratic support, so to 2020 Joe Biden levels. So I think the lesson in there is that these voters are up for grabs. They didn't vote for Donald Trump because they're permanent conservatives.
Mhm.
They voted for Donald Trump because he was offering something that the Democrats weren't. And I don't want to be a broken record, so I'm going to try to figure out another way to say this. But I think the lesson in connecting with young people in particular is being able to be humble and to admit that actions that we have taken, I say that I'm even just an elder millennial.
Yeah, the
But
elder
things
millennial. Let me let that
that-
sink in. The elder millennial. Okay.
Yes.
Go for it.
And I'm complete with my pantsuit today. But that we have taken actions and supported actions that have made it impossible for young people in this country to feel like they can achieve the American dream. And I think the Democratic Party has gotten really detached from that ideal and even from that way of talking. We have become the party of the status quo, and there is no bigger death knell in politics, especially in a post Trump world, than being the non disruptors.
Let me ask you about women in politics for a second. So, probably one of the best known Democratic women in play is AOC. And she is anything but shy. She's right out there. She's bringing it. And she and Bernie, I think, even if you don't like their politics at all, the roadshow is worth seeing because it's
the Fighting Oligarchy tour.
Yes, it's great theater, right? But if you're not built that way, you're a woman, you're not quite built to be that like over the top at times. Is there still room at the table for women of purpose and determination and skill and experience to really emerge in this environment to become leaders?
I think so, absolutely. I mean, there are a number of women who fill that description that won very tough races in 2024. And because Democrats love to self-flagellate all day long, we don't talk about it. But like, look at Jackie Rosen. Look at Alyssa Slotkin picking up that seat.
Right.
Look at Tammy Baldwin. You know, those are women whose politics, at least on the party level, are diametrically opposed to AOC's, and they managed to pull this off. So, yeah, I think there are a lot of these women, and it is a concern that I have and the party has generally. You know, the right is very effective at painting with a super broad brush. That's the real threat of the Mamdani win, which I imagine he will win. Everyone says, oh, well, the Democratic Party is the party of Zohran Mamdani. And they did this with defund the police, even though it was only a few voices. But it took basically Jim Clyburn coming out and screaming about this and getting everyone back in line to say, you can't even flirt with a conversation like that. So the presence, obviously, it feels enormous. And the way that AOC does it, it's tremendous. She's just such an amazing talent. And I think that people who demean her and call her an idiot are really missing the point and are so utterly off base. She's very formidable. I'm sure you saw that Nate Silver has her as the dark horse for the 2028 primary. I mean, there's basically no one in the progressive lane that could compete with her.
Yeah. No
at
question.
This point. But I still think it's a good time to be a centrist woman in Democratic politics.
So let's talk about Fox for a second. I know generally you probably feel a little bit outnumbered on set. Politically.
I mean, that is technically true as well, not just my feelings.
So was there a particular moment that you either remember because you were uncomfortable when the way things were coming down or because you kind of knew you had scored a point in an open conversation about something where your point of view clearly, let's just say, made more sense than others that are being presented?
I obviously think that I win more points than maybe Greg thinks that I'm winning. And that's part of it, right? That's part of how the show works and why I think that it's effective for people and why it continues to draw such an awesome amount of viewership because people can get different things from each of us. So there's something for everyone in there, but there are kind of two types of moments, I guess, I want to speak to in answer to your question. So a moment where it wasn't necessarily about a heated back and forth, but was really difficult for me was being on the day that the Dobbs decision came down and finding the right data and information that I wanted to talk about to explain what this decision was going to mean for poor women in Texas or Louisiana. You know, I've always been very clear about the fact that no matter what shifts we see in the law, I'm always going to be able to get the healthcare that I need. Yeah. I'm an upper middle class woman from New York City. I could go to Europe, God forbid, if I need to get reproductive health care. So figuring out how to say that and also to talk about it from the personal lens, because I think that's really important for viewers to connect with that. Yep. I'm also, you know, I have 2 young daughters. I have been pregnant a couple of times on air, you know, gone on maternity leave, and my personal life is a big part of, you know, what we talk about on the show, just as everyone else's is. So that was a really tough 2.5 minutes. And it is rare that I speak for that long uninterrupted. And I did that day. Everybody understood how important that decision was, not just for me and my politics, but for the country. So that's one type of thing. And then there are the back and forth kind of fights, right? Where you're ping-ponging. And I had a really good exchange a couple of years ago with Greg about what actually are the majority positions. And we started getting into, you know, support for abortion rights and support for trans people, not for trans athletes, but for trans people to be able to live their lives in peace or to get gender affirming care if they're over 18, et cetera. And that was definitely a moment where it was intense. And he probably walked away from it feeling like he did a really good job. And I walked away from it really feeling like I had done a good job as well. And then I think because everyone is friends and wants to make sure that the day after looks good, that, we always try to be friendly and chatty afterwards as
Good.
well. That it's not like you had a war and you go back to your own camps, but that we are all part of the same team that are trying to discuss these really important and salient issues to the American public, but also to make a show that continues to resonate with, up to 4 million people a day.
You talked about your daughters, Teddy and Cleo, and
yeah.
I'm now starting to feel what you were feeling when you had that 2.5 minutes after the Dobbs decision. I'd imagine you're talking as much to Cleo and Teddy as you are to anybody on earth, right? What would you like them to read about you that would make them as proud then as they are of you today?
I guess 2 things that I hope that they find. That one, I was someone that stood up for my values, not just my politics, but my values. And I'm actually writing a book about this right now. I think it's so important, especially for young people, to find a path towards being able to develop a point of view that's rooted in reality and that they're also able to convey effectively without offending people. We just turn people off so easily, or we personally get offended so easily. That's something I hope that they see. And then the second piece of it is that I hope that they see me or read about me as someone that actually tried to bridge some of our divides.
Yeah.
Right now, America feels very starved for cross-political conversation and cross-political friendships as well.
Yep.
And even if they're collegial friendships, they're still friendships nevertheless. And I hope that it comes across to people that I am modeling good citizen behavior. Like I'm not taking my politics and going to my corner and just shouting about it into an echo chamber, that actually taking that conversation to people who disagree with me may not change their minds, but at least they know that I'm an honest actor that was there to really have a conversation.
You probably understand this intellectually, but you have such an impact on the conversation already. Being on Fox News and being able to present a different point of view is critical for us getting to a bigger place, right? To maybe a better place. And you do that all the time. And it's not easy.
Thank you.
It's not easy when you're outnumbered. It's not easy when the audience goes in cheering for the guy who's leaning back in his chair, right? But it is a vital function that you're serving. And I hope that that's the thing that Cleo and Teddy are going to be reading about you years from now.
I appreciate it. And I'm thrilled if even, a fraction of the audience feels that way. The loudest voices, certainly on social media, are usually the detractors, and I get plenty of that. But when I meet people who engage with the show or who love the network out in the wild, they're always so kind and forthcoming about how much they like having someone like me there. And I think that it is as well, always good opportunity to plug your employer. But Fox, and Suzanne Scott, who promoted me to this role while I was on maternity leave even, which is, God's gift to a woman, right? That you're going to get actually promoted while you're out. But chose to have such an outspoken Democrat in that role. Alan Combs was an incredible person, but Hannity and Combs was designed differently than what the modern day Five looks like with me and with Harold Ford Jr., whose politics are definitely more to the right of mine even, but who presents a point of view that captures a real part of the party. It's a big honor to be able to do it. And I'm thrilled to hear that I'm even making that kind of impact for some folks who, know the show.
Well, Jessica, it's an honor to have you on the show. My only advice to you is keep being who you are. It's working, and it's really helping, I think, move the needle in a good way for the rest of us.
I hope that you're right, and it's always wonderful to make a BICO connection. So thank you for having me.
It's been our pleasure.